Hey there, EB here on the Anything But Bland Weekly Update. It's Friday. Hope everybody's had a great week. Looks beautiful outside. Not too hot, although it's supposed to get very hot. Not much really happened this week in volume, but there's a lot of substance that happened this week. We're going to talk about Malcolm Jamal Warner, um, Ozzy Osbourne dying, as well as Hulk Hogan, who is just in the pantheon of wrestling greats. He's certainly, certainly, I believe, the most famous wrestler of all time. So we'll talk about it. But let's start off with really what's going on in Washington. The Trump Jerome Powell feud. Jerome Powell is head of the Federal Reserve, and it's no secret that even though Trump appointed him in 2018 during his first term, Trump is very disappointed that he is not lowering interest rates. It's not just his responsibility. There's, I think, 12 other people on the committee that has to vote. But certainly his voice carries a lot of weight. Trump is talking about the fact that the European Union have lowered their interest rates, I think, 10 times. He wants the interest rates to lower. Economists say that if these interest rates um, are lowered, there's going to be a renewed inflation. It's hard to forecast that, but yesterday the feud is really was disconcerting. Trump decided to go to the Federal Reserve building, first time that a president has done that since George Bush II did it during his term. There usually is a dividing line between the White House and the Federal Reserve, the executive branch and the Federal Reserve, because it's supposed to be devoid of politics. Well, yesterday, Trump went with Senator Tim Scott and Powell to look at the ongoing construction. And as everybody knows, Powell's been brought before Congress. Some of the congressmen and women think he lied and understated how much is being spent on the renovations. And so yesterday, Trump wanted to try to humiliate him with Tim Scott, and he pulled out a letter from his vest pocket and handed it to Jerome Powell and said, this is a $3.5 million project and not a 2.7 million billion dollar renovation project like you testified before Congress. So, what's the number? Powell grabbed the letter from President Trump, put on his glasses, looked at it and said, well, that's interesting. You counted a building that's been built 5 years ago, not this new construction. And he just, you know, handed it back to Trump and was disgusted. And it really looked like that Trump was humiliated. He slapped Powell on the back and said, why don't you lower interest rates? But this is a real problem that we're having where the executive branch is trying to influence the Federal Reserve. And if that happens, wait till you see the uncertainty in world markets, because that's something that we pride ourselves on, that the executive branch cannot influence the Federal Reserve. The new thing this week is that Trump and Tulsi Gabbard, in order to divert the attention away from the Epstein matter, Tulsi Gabbard came out and said that she's done a referral to the Justice Department so that Obama and Biden and some others are criminally charged for lying about Russia's interference in the 2016 election. Obama clearly said that Russia did not um, influence the outcome of the election, but he clearly said that they did interfere, and they did submit a lot of propaganda at that time. In fact, so much so that in 2018, when Marco Rubio was a senator, he actually headed the Committee on the Foreign Intelligence Community, and he said they released a report that Russia definitely interfered, didn't influence, didn't change the outcome of Trump's election against Hillary Clinton. So it's a word semantic game that is being played, but it's very dangerous when Trump, when he got immunity last year before the election by the Supreme Court, said that he wasn't getting immunity for himself. He was getting it for the office of the president, and said that the president wouldn't be able to carry out his duties and responsibilities unless he had immunity, a president. Well, Trump only wants immunity for himself. He doesn't want it when it would apply to Biden or when it would apply to Obama. And those are official acts you would have immunity for. So we'll see how this plays out. It's just another smoke fire that Trump wants to put in play because of how much problems he's having with getting the Epstein matter contained. A big win for the Trump administration this week, having an economic tariff agreement entered into with Japan. Japan is one of our largest trading partners in the world, with India and China and Canada and Mexico. I would say those are our top 5 trading partners. And it certainly looked like a very lucrative agreement that Trump entered into with Japan, and I applaud him for that. Trump said that Japan is going to invest over $990 billion in the United States. So that's a good thing. Japan is a good ally of ours, not like China. So kudos to President Trump on that. The 30 days that they gave from the original July 2nd date is going to be up next week. So we're going to see if there's just going to be an imposition of these tariffs against a lot of the countries that haven't negotiated a final agreement. Hunter Biden was interviewed this week, and I think every time that man opens his mouth, he gets himself in trouble, gets his family in trouble, although Joe Rogan seems to think that he accorded himself well. Hunter claimed that his father, Joe Biden, was on Ambien during the presidential debacle debate last year, and that was a big problem for Joe Biden. Obviously, after the debate, there was a massive call for him to drop out of the race. The problem was that if he was on Ambien, there's no prescription for that in the presidential record. So who would be giving him Ambien? Hunter claimed that he was tired from a 10-day trip, which I'm sure he was, a 10-day international trip before the debate. Hunter Biden, I think, just needs to shut up and go away. I really do feel that. He did say something that was pretty poignant when everybody was trying to say that he's, running a shadow presidency with his stepmother, Joe Biden. Hunter, tongue-in-cheek, said, I did have a lot of problems back then with a lot of drugs and a lot of trials, and I don't think anybody would let me in the White House starting to make decisions that would affect the lives of the American people, which does kind of make sense. The big thing this week is that Todd Blanche, who's one of Trump's private lawyers, that we're going to talk about him, Alina Habba, and Emil Bove, 3 of the lawyers that represented Trump in his New York trials over the past couple of years. Todd Blanche met yesterday with Ghislaine Maxwell. She was the right-hand caretaker for Epstein, would get the young girls, coordinate all the travel arrangements for these underage girls and famous people that would come to his island, fly on his plane. She was also accused of and convicted of sex trafficking and actually having relationships with these young women. She was doing a 20-year sentence. What's interesting is he's also interviewing her today. How would you interview somebody who is guilty of perjury, of lying about her relationships with these girls? But it seems to me that this is her last shot of getting out, getting some kind of pardon. So it's going to be interesting to see if she says certain things about Donald Trump that, yes, he was a great friend of Epstein, but he never partied or never was any women, in return for her getting a pardon. That's going to be interesting. Speaker Mike Johnson is trying to do a balancing act because the congressional Republicans want the DOJ records to be subpoenaed regarding Epstein. Their constituents, the MAGA constituents, have their teeth dug in on this. This was a big, big issue for a lot of the MAGA, claiming that the rich and wealthy Democrats and rich and wealthy people are pedophiles, and they're not going to let this go. Even though he let the Republicans adjourn for the month of August to go back home and wouldn't give a floor vote on whether these files should be subpoenaed, the Oversight Committee, chaired by James Comer, a House member from Kentucky, they voted on a bipartisan basis to have a floor vote, and they voted that all the records should be subpoenaed. Columbia University, this is another win for Trump and another applaud for him. He got them to pay $200 million to the federal government for the discrimination that was done on Jewish students and students in general last year by the Palestinian protests, and 20 million of those dollars are going to go to the Jewish students. That's 220 million. Again, I applaud President Trump for that. I talked about Alina Habba. She was one of Trump's private lawyers in the sexual assault trial last year, in which he was convicted and got, not convicted, held guilty and had a $105 million judgment. She was temporarily appointed as the U.S. attorney for the state of New Jersey. The problem was it was a temporary appointment. There are 120 days. The way the law's written, the judges have the ability to terminate that temporary appointment after 120 days, and they did. These are mostly Obama-appointed judges and Biden-appointed judges in New Jersey, and they terminated her service, which really irked Pam Bondi as well as Trump. And when she was terminated, the first assistant becomes the elevated next attorney general. Well, Pam Bondi immediately fired that woman and reinstated Alina Habba as the first assistant now that there's no longer an attorney general, a U.S. attorney acting U.S. attorney in New Jersey. Alina Habba was just appointed again, and that was done in New York. John Sarcone in upstate New York, the same problem happened where the judges voted him out. She will never be a permanent U.S. attorney because there's a privilege to New Jersey senators that they have the right to dispute that she should go before the Senate on a vote. And Cory Booker and the other senator that was just appointed for Menendez's seat, who now is serving time and was convicted, they both will not advance her. Emil Bove is the other third attorney that was Trump's private attorney in the New York trials, and he is trying to get a job as an appellate court judge, I think on the Second Circuit. He is widely panned. He's widely not respected. They felt that he has done some incredibly partisan things while he's been at the Justice Department. So his certainly advice and consent through the Senate is in jeopardy. Because of the pressure of the Epstein matter, Pam Bondi and Trump said that they would go to the Miami judge to get some of the grand jury transcripts released, not the materials that form the testimony of the grand jury transcripts. And they went before the judge in Miami this week, who said, no, I'm not going to release grand jury transcripts. By law, they're protected. There's not enough of a public policy reason to let these go. They're now going to try to judge shop in New York to get another judge to do that. Again, Tulsi Gabbard wants to prosecute Obama and some others over the Russia 2016 election. She has become a laughing stock. She's not really relied upon by Trump when it comes to national security decisions. And I think she's doing this to shore up her bona fides with MAGA. The Gaza humanitarian crisis is extremely serious. Even though I'm a pro-Israel and I'm so anti-Hamas, there are a lot of young children, elderly people, and sick people that are starving to death. in the Gaza Strip. It's disconcerting. You saw a lot of photos on the TV of young kids. Their bones are literally showing, their ribs are showing. This isn't what we should be doing. This isn't what we should be seeing on Israel. And shame on Netanyahu for not permitting food to come in. Um, I think the United States is somewhat complicit in this because what has happened is the United States excused itself from peace negotiations that were taking place in Qatar this week. Yes, Hamas is completely unreasonable. Yes, Hamas will not relent and give up its foothold in the government, but we can't let people starve. The big announcement yesterday was that France said they're going to acknowledge Palestinians for their statehood status. They're going to give a statehood status to Palestine. They're the first of the largest 7 nations on the Human Rights Committee for the United Nations to agree to this. I think Germany's ultimately going to agree to this, and there are some other European countries. Netanyahu said this was a slap in the face to what happened on October 7th. I don't think the United States is going to do this, but certainly there is some displeasure between President Trump and Prime Minister Netanyahu because of the bombing of the Catholic Church last week in Gaza, the killing of an American Christian in the West Bank, as well as what is being gone on with shooting at the humanitarian aid stations where Israeli troops are killing people at the humanitarian food stations. What this is going to result in is Israel's going to take over the West Bank, because if they're going to declare statehood to the Gaza Strip, Israel's not going to want 2 sovereign states bordering their country. So that's going to be a major, major problem. There's an attorney in California, Tom Girardi. He was a very flamboyant lawyer, married to one of the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. He just started a 7-year sentence at 86 years old for stealing millions from his clients. Sound familiar? Alex Murdaugh. That's a very interesting thing. One thing came out last week that Dick Harpootlian said that, again, there's new text messages between Cousin Eddie and Alex Murdaugh that he claims he did not see before the trial, that the government suppressed this relevant information in these text messages he would like to have seen before the trial, because he made a trial strategy decision not to call Cousin Eddie, and he would have possibly changed his strategy had he had these text messages. There's a real debate on that he actually had these text messages because Fitz News had them. So we'll see how that plays out. Again, here's another win for President Trump. A couple of them. One, he got Coca-Cola to now release their cane sugar Coca-Cola products in the United States that previously were in Europe and in Mexico. Our Coca-Cola products have high fructose syrup in them, which are pretty bad for you. And so people who like Coca-Cola products, the cane sugar tastes so much better. I've had them in Europe, and good for him. He also got Australia to agree to permit the United States to start selling their beef in Australia. Believe it or not, we do have a great relationship with Australia. They're a trading partner, they're an ally, but there was a prohibition of taking United States beef. Trump now got them to relent on that, and now he said there's going to be hundreds of thousands and millions of pounds of beef being shipped to Australia, and he's working on every other country that is prohibiting United States beef from coming into their countries. And that's a big thing. Trump claims that we have, and I agree, the healthiest beef in the world, relatively disease-free. So that, again, I applaud President Trump. That's another victory for him. The Kiss Cam scandal of the two, the president and the head of HR at the Coldplay concert won't die. Yesterday, the head of the HR, the lady, She resigned her position. The question is, she actually probably had a suit, although it wouldn't go far because she knows the perils of dating in the workplace because she's an HR director. But if there was any type of coercion or forced relationship where she felt her job was at risk, if she didn't have an affair with her um, boss, the president and CEO, she may have had a claim for sexual harassment. The interesting thing is now she's not wearing a wedding ring, and the wife of the president and CEO is held up in their house. I really feel bad for their spouses and their families. Um, in New Jersey, a man committed suicide who owned a very, very large sports memorabilia business. He sold over $350 million worth of memorabilia products. And the interesting thing is, before he committed suicide, he said about 95% of the stuff that he sold was fake, that he would have fake signatures, fake holograms, fake certificates of authenticity. Um, so everybody, buyer beware out there. When you're buying sports memorabilia, you know, you got to be really careful. It's like, you know, game worn jerseys of Dr. J. You know, how many are there out there? It's like when people saw Wilt Chamberlain score 100 points. The Hershey, Pennsylvania Coliseum only held 3,500 people, but throughout history, about 100,000 people said they were at the game, and it wasn't on TV. So that's you know, one of those things that you should just beware of if you're buying a game jersey or a ball or something like that. Um, the next thing, Stephen Colbert was fired by CBS, meaning the show was canceled. It was one of the highest rated nightly television shows, although that's a little deceiving because they don't have quite the same ratings that they used to have now that we have cable TV. But they claimed, CBS, that he was losing $50 million dollars a year, that the CBS was losing $50 million dollars a year on the Colbert Show. Trump claims that there's still more money that's going to be paid by CBS over the $16 million dollars. He claims another $20 million is going to be paid. This is a real problem when these television stations are starting to knuckle under. Trump has done two uh, um, executive orders this week. I agree on one of those executive orders. One of them, he said that he's going to stop colleges from paying disproportionate money to athletes. I think that's a real problem. The portal and everything has hurt college football and college basketball. So that's an interesting executive order. I don't know what teeth he's going to have, whether they're going to give them an antitrust exemption or take it away. But that was an interesting one. The second one he did is he said that there's going to be no homeless people on the streets. I think it's a good thing. We don't want homeless people on the streets, but he's going to make it a law, a criminal law, that you can't be homeless and be on the streets. I don't know how that's going to be enforced with some people that don't have the money for housing or to rent a house or to buy a house, but that's another executive order that he did. Scotty Scheffler won the British Open last week. He blew everybody away. He won it by, I think, 5 strokes. This is his fourth major. I think it's his 17th or 18th tour win. He's winning majors at the same clip that Jack Nicklaus and Tiger Woods have won them from their first major to their fourth. He has turned his putting around, where he used to be 150th on the tour in putting. He's now second. Proximity to the hole on his shots to the green are number one in bounce back birdies. Bounce back birdies are a very important stat for a pro. You know, guys like us and women like us, we get a double bogey, we can't turn it around with a birdie. We usually get another double bogey or a bogey, and we start on a bogey train. He turns a bogey, and to the next hole, he gets a birdie better than anybody on the tour. He is a once in a generation player. He's very grounded. Um, he believes he's very religious. He's very family oriented and friend oriented, and he doesn't, I don't think he thinks about records. The thing that people don't realize about him is that he won 83 times as a junior golfer in Texas. Uh, he competed against, the likes of Jordan Spieth and some other big Texas players. And so when you win 83 times as a junior golfer, you learn how to win. Um, we had the Kohlberger sentencing this week. It was brutal to hear. He didn't acknowledge his victims. He didn't acknowledge his family that was in the courtroom, didn't say anything. They're starting to release some of the records, and one of the victims was stabbed over 50 times. I hope life is very miserable for this man for the rest of his life. He won't get parole. He's probably not going to be able to go in Gen Pop. So it's going to be a tough remainder of his life, and good for him to get that kind of misery for the rest of his life. Trump wants the Commanders, the Washington Commanders and the Cleveland Guardians, to change their names back to the Redskins and Indians. He's threatening the DC stadium deal of $3.7 billion for the Washington Commanders to change their name back, and I think they should. We have the Atlanta Braves. They haven't taken their name off. The Florida State Seminoles. I don't think it's disrespectful. I just think it's history. And so I'm in agreement with him on that. The Dodgers have really slid over the past 15 games. They're still holding on the first place, but not by much. The Yankees just got passed up by the Blue Jays. They're 4.5 games down. Aaron Judge just passed Alex Rodriguez for 6 on the Yankees home run list. I think by the time he's done, I think he's going to break almost all of the Yankees records. And if he can stay healthy, I think he's going to be a real threat to hitting 700 home runs. Very sad that Malcolm Jamal Warner drowned in Costa Rica. He was on the Cosby Show in the 70s, a great guy. He had some great parts as he got older. Just a good guy, and it's very sad that he died at 54 years old. Sabrina Ionescu, she plays for the New York Liberty. She won the three-point contest last week in the All-Star weekend for the WNBA. Wonderful shooter, probably as good as Caitlin Clark. Caitlin Clark probably has a little longer range. The whole thing with Caitlin Clark is befuddling to me. Why the WNBA players have animosity towards her. She's done an amazing job at bringing eyes and attention to the WNBA, and they have a collective bargaining agreement coming up where I think it's going to be better for women's basketball, and so they owe a big debt to her. Ionescu scored 30, I think got 30 points in the last finals of the three-point shooting. She's an amazing shooter, and she competed against Seth Curry a couple years ago at the All-Star weekend. She can light it up. Jeff Bezos is thinking of buying CNBC, which is interesting. And Jeff Zuckerman, who lives in Hawaii, bought another 2,300 acres or 1,000 acres to go with the other 13 he had, where he has his compound in Hawaii, and the houses and buildings on there are as big as 2 football fields. Ozzy Osbourne died this week, the Prince of Darkness. He was with the band Black Sabbath pretty much from 1968 through 1979 till he was kicked out of the band. Ozzy was a notorious drug addict, admitted to doing LSD for 2 years. Really the father, the godfather of heavy metal. I think he was his band really was one of the forefathers of heavy metal for Metallica, Guns N' Roses, these type of iconic bands. It's amazing that Ozzy had his last concert 18 days ago, and he played sitting down in a chair. Had really bad Parkinson's, couldn't walk. He was, in a wheelchair, and he died 18 days later. He sang, I think, 5 or 6 songs, and Black Sabbath played with him, and there were other bands. Just a really funny guy. The Osbourne's reality show from 2002 to I think 2007 or 2005 was pretty funny to watch. He had an up and down marriage with Sharon. Uh, there was a time I think he threatened to kill her, but they stayed together. I think he had a total of six children. There were two or three that were on the Osbourne show. One of his children was Sharon, didn't want to get on. So that was interesting. Sad day yesterday. Hulk Hogan died. He was 71 years old. He had over 25 surgeries on his back as well as his neck. He admitted to significant steroid abuse. He was addicted to pain pills at different times. He was an alcoholic, he said. Just a great guy. I think, I represented Ric Flair for about 3 or 4 years, a childhood idol of mine. I liked Hulk Hogan. I didn't think he was the wrestler that Ric Flair was, or Ricky Steamboat or John Cena, or certainly The Rock, but he was a persona. And I think other than The Rock, and Rock may be close because of all his movies, Hulk Hogan's most popular, recognized wrestler of all time. He will be missed. I listened to Ric Flair talk about him last night. Rick was crying. Certainly a shocking death at 71 years old. That's really young. I mean, I'm 63, and that's only 8 years from now. So very scary to lose somebody like that. I think his greatest moment was when he body slammed Andre the Giant. He lifted him up straight up over his head and then body slammed him. It's really one of the most iconic moments in sports. And I was talking with my son Davis about what are the most iconic moments in sports. Certainly that was Muhammad Ali knocking out Sonny Liston and standing over him that with his punch like that. You guys need to look at that, and you'll see Liston's on the mat, and you look at Ali's face. I think Michael Jordan hitting the game 7 or 6 shot against the Utah Jazz at the top of the key with his tongue out when he was sick, and I think he ended up with 42 points. He had the flu. It's iconic. Kirk Gibson hitting that home run for the Dodgers in 1988 when he had a torn ACL and came in and hit a pitch hit home run. Certainly Bill Buckner for the Red Sox when the ball went through his legs at first base was an iconic moment. Henry Aaron breaking Babe Ruth's home run record in 1974 running around the bases really was an iconic moment. So, Hulk Hogan body slamming Andre the Giant is in one of the top 10 iconic moments in sports. There's a special on HBO with Billy Joel. It's a 2-part special. Right now he has hydrocephalus with his water on the brain. He was interviewed by Bill Maher this week, and he said it's affecting his balance, not his cognitive thinking, but he said, I always feel like I'm on a boat rocking. He's lost a lot of weight. He's an amazing songwriter, amazing singer. So watch that special. You know how good somebody is a musician. Now the critics panned him. He was never respected, never considered one of the top musicians. But Ray Charles, Bruce Springsteen, and Paul McCartney have nothing but the highest of praise for Billy Joel. They call him a troubadour, just like you would call Van Morrison. I think the biggest compliment Paul McCartney said is, I really wish I wrote the song, I Love You Just the Way You Are. Actually, that was a song in my brother Robbie and his wife Stacy's wedding. It's a beautiful love song. So with that, let's turn our attention to some of the audience questions. Somebody asked me what will happen if Alex Murdaugh loses his appeal in the South Carolina Supreme Court. Then he will go to the federal court and he will argue the constitutional violations in federal court under a habeas corpus petition. And essentially, what he's going to argue is that Justice Toll should have applied the federal standard on jury interference, that all you have to show is that there was interference by an official or somebody with the jury, and that gets you a new trial. You remember the state standard she applied not only requires you to show the interference, but an additional factor that it affected the outcome of the verdict. She's somebody said, I don't have a question, just a comment. I'm watching American Greed right now. I was on that show about Alex Murdaugh. Prior to this, I knew all the details about the murders, the son's accident, family dynamics, but this really put faces behind the victims of the fraud and theft. She said, great job representing the victims. Trump on Jeffrey Epstein's file, a federal judge denied that request. I said for the grand jury records, didn't surprise me. This person asked, could this disclosure trigger new investigations or prompt defamation or legal exposure for Trump or others named? No. If you are giving an interview to a federal official, then you are protected on immunity statute purposes. But Trump has filed a $20 billion defamation suit against Murdoch, who owns Fox News, as well as the Wall Street Journal, that said that he sent a birthday card to Jeffrey Epstein that was, profanity laced and had a picture of a woman in her vagina. Trump says he didn't do that. He doesn't draw, except he does sell his artwork and has done that, and he doodles and has sold some of his doodles. So we're just going to have to see what happens. With the Kohberger case, he's going to have life in prison. He can never challenge his sentence. He pled guilty. He'll never win on a ineffective assistance of counsel. He'll never win on a habeas corpus. His crimes were so heinous that there's no judge that will hold that there was a violation of his constitutional rights. The victims have no other recourse unless there's a civil suit that they can do against somebody. He doesn't have any money. There's probably a law that prevents him from writing a book and profiting on it. But some of these records are going to become unsealed, and I think it's going to be very disturbing to find out how he committed these crimes. Remember, he was a criminal justice graduate student, so I think he kind of got, caught up in trying to see if he could get away with the ultimate crime. Cruise ship documentary, the Amy Bradley case. Amy Bradley is missing. It revisits the 1998 disappearance of a college student from a cruise ship. Could the renewed public attention force cruise lines to reopen or release these investigative files? It's hard to tell. They probably won't. Cruise ships limit their liability on your ticket when you buy your cruise ticket. And there's also maritime law that applies, as well as international law of the seas. And it's very difficult to sue these cruise companies. You saw the Poop Cruise on Netflix. So that is it for the weekly news update. Let's see who checked in. Kimberly Campbell said, I loved when he had his baby stand next to the trophy. Yep, that was very, very cool. Virginia Rodriguez said, life of misery is at least some kind of justice for Kohberger. I totally agree. So everybody have a great weekend, and we'll talk next week. Over and out. EB out.